This is what happens when I don't feel like drawing. I do Adobe Illustrator tutorials instead. Hi guys, this is part 2. There's a part 1. And you know, if you are like a super beginner with Illustrator and you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you see part 1. In this video, we are going to take apart the stroke tool option box, and I'm going to show you all my favorite tips and tricks on how to utilize the stroke option box to draw more efficiently. Here is my workspace. I like this kind of workspace. I like having the ruler tool. How do I get these? On the side and at the top, you just hit Command R. Command R. Right? And these are the tools that I use the most often and always have in my space. So the regular toolbar, and then my stroke options box, my color option box, and my layers. Okay? These are the 3 that are almost always here when I'm working in Illustrator. Now, if you cannot find any of these, you just go to your Windows tab. Ta-da! Okay, here's your stroke, here's your layers, here's your color, blah, 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 all the good things. Here's your stroke option box. If you see this and you're like, where are all my options? Just go to this little button here, show options. Bam, you get all your options. Number 1, your weight. Here is a random line that I drew for this tutorial, and you click here and you can select whatever thickness of line that you want. You can click up or down, or you can just write in a number, and now you get the super skinny line, right? So that's that. This is the cap, and this is the corner option. This is the butt cap, okay, which means the line ends right at the end of your path, okay? The green line in here, that's the path you drew. The black here, that's the weight of the stroke that you selected. And then the end of it, this is the butt cap. That's what they call it, not me. And it ends right there. You can select a round cap and it rounds out the edges. Okay. Or you could do a projecting cap and it projects past your drawn path. Okay. So you can play around with those options. Now here is your corner tool, and here you can have just the regular corner. You can have a rounded corner, and you can have a beveled joint corner where it just kind of lops off the corner. And that is often just a personal preference. Like 99.9% of the time when I adjust the corner is when I have this problem here. I'll show you. So here is a pencil skirt. Here's the front of it. Here's the back of it. Since I can see the back of the skirt from the front, I draw it in the flat. And then I have this weird corner overlapping thing happening. Okay, and it's annoying because the corners are sticking out. Everything is aligned properly, but it's sticking out. So you have this, and so what I would do is I would select these 2 pieces and I would round the corners, and voila, no random sticky outy pointy things sticking out into space. Now, for the cap tool, look at this line. This is a sloppy line. Maybe I did it on purpose for the tutorial. Maybe I'm sloppy. You decide. All right. So here's this tiny gap here, which is so annoying. And maybe you don't want to draw it or fix it or change it. All you have to do is select it and extend the cap. Maybe this one. And ta-da! You bridge the tiny little bit of gap. Okay. So I use these most often for cleanup purposes, you know, little fudgy things. Right? I probably shouldn't, but I mean, whatever. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda, something. Okay, this align stroke thing, I have never used it, and I mentioned this in the first video. There are a bunch of things that I don't use because I don't need them, so I'm not going to teach them to you. So while we're on the subject of stroke width and whatnot, look at these 2 flats. This one, all the lines are in a 0.5 point. And this flat, all the lines are in a 1 point line. This is one of those things where it's all about a personal preference on how you want things to look. For me, it goes project to project, where if I want something to look more delicate and refined, like if I'm doing flats for cocktail dresses or, you know, girls' party dresses or cute little ruffles on something, I'm gonna use a finer line. And if I want something that is bolder because I'm doing sportswear, athletic, activewear, something like that, and I want a bolder graphic look, and later on I'm gonna put a bunch of like fashion graphic chenille patches on it, I wanna do a thicker line to kind of show that bolder graphic look. And another thing I like to do sometimes in the presentation is to have like a bold outline all around the flat, the outer edges of the flat, and that's true whether or not I'm drawing them by hand or whether I'm drawing them in Illustrator. So I'm going to show you how I do that. Number one, take the whole flat, select the whole thing, copy, and then paste it onto a new layer. Okay, make sure this layer is underneath the layer of the previous one. Okay, see? The green one is here, the pink one is here. So I have this second one and I selected the whole garment and I'm going to group it. Okay. That is Command G. What is grouping? Grouping just turns all your paths and things into one object. If you look at the layers, this green one, you can see all the individual paths that make up this flat. Here, everything is in one group. Here, if you want to move the whole thing, you have to select the whole thing, right? Whereas here, I just click once and it selects the whole thing because now it's just one object. So I've grouped this, and then I'm going to amp up the weight of the stroke, something like that. I'm going to take this flat and I'm going to line it up with this one perfectly. Boink. And now I have this presentation where the outside line is thick. It really pops off the page, but the inside lines are still nice and thin, and it doesn't really get in the way of the design. It's just those are the seams, and then the outside is very bold. Sometimes I like to do a drop shadow effect. So I'll take that same, let's just lock this layer while we're playing, okay? To take this and boink, I will fill it in with a gray and then make the outside nothing. And then I will put in a little drop shadow. Ta-da! Alright, so it's the exact same shape of your flat, but you can play with outlines and drop shadows using the colors and the stroke and blah, blah, blah to create nice graphic presentations for your flats. So let's talk about the dash line tool. Here are two identical corset flats, waist cincher, underbust things. And this one, all the top stitching was done with a dash line, and this one was done with a solid line. So here's the thing. When I'm drawing flats by hand, there is no way in hell I'm going to draw dash lines for every row of top stitching. It's just not going to happen, okay? Because nobody has time for that. I especially do not have time for that. So I will take my skinniest pencil, a 0.3 H lead, and draw in the skinniest lines for top stitching. Ooh, I got a 0.2 lead size mechanical pencil, and I still haven't played with it yet, but I can't wait to draw some flats with it. Okay, so something super skinny, and then the seam lines are a bit bolder. The only time I will draw individual dashes for hand-drawn flats is if it's something like pick stitching where the gaps are really wide. Otherwise, forget it. Now, when you're doing flats in Illustrator, you have all these options. You can do the dashed lines very easily, or you can do the solid lines. And I just did this so that you guys can see the look. I generally prefer the dashed line for Illustrator flats, and here's why. Illustrator flats are your most technical flats, and the aesthetics of Illustrator flats come second to how well they can communicate the construction of a garment. And when you have a dashed line, it truly, without question, communicates top stitching. Okay? Whereas this, it does, but actually this could be some sort of paneling sitting on top. Okay, maybe you have bone channeling sitting on the outside. It could be all kinds of things. It could be a fold, it could be a tuck, whatever. Whereas this dashed line sitting along a seam, that is most definitely top stitching. Okay? So I prefer the dashed line. Your dashed line tool is right here on your stroke option box. And your top stitching should really look like the top stitching you're planning in your mind. This is your standard regular thread, regular, maybe 8 stitches per inch sort of stitch top stitching. Okay? And yeah, on your tech packs, you will designate a stitches per inch. Okay? That's a quality control issue, both for your seams and for your top stitching. You can play with the dash, which is the actual mark, and the gap, the space in between, to create different effects with your top stitching. I encourage you guys to play on your own and put in different numbers. And you can have something like this. You can also play with the round corners, see how that looks, and then see how that looks. And maybe you want it even thicker. Maybe you're gonna just pick like super fat thread. Maybe you're going for a more Western look. You get even thicker and fatter and rounder with your top stitching, all kinds of things. You can do teeny tiny stitches with big gaps for kind of the actual like pick stitching with the fat threads in suede, that kind of look. You can do You could do something like this, where it's a little bit fat and the stitches are a little bit long with small gaps, like sachiko stitching, quilting stitches, all kinds of things. So pay attention to those kinds of details for the overall effect that you want. Because as you're here, and you're designing here, you can also figure out, oh, this is actually how I want to design this. I want a big, graphic, bold, contrasty look. No, I want the top stitching to be subtle. I want it kind of low key, but this kind of top stitching is necessary for the construction, but I don't really want it very visible. Okay, you have to think about those things as a designer and translate that to your stroke weight and your dashes, how big your gaps are, that sort of thing. Okay? Another thing that I like to use the dash line for is zippers. If you're drawing any kind of like lap zipper or anything where the zipper is covered, of course you just draw the outside of the garment, but I'm talking about when you have exposed zippers as part of your design. So let's put a big old exposed zipper on the front of this pencil skirt. First, you want to find the center of your garment. These little markings, that means that's the center of the outside shape. So that's the center of your garment. You're going to want a guideline. So I'm going to go to your ruler, Command R, remember, and just click and drag this guide bar. Open up your layers, okay? And if you take your pen tool and try to start a line up here, it's just going to delete this point. And you don't want that. You already had that line there on purpose. So what I like to do is take this and lock some of these layers that are in my way. And then I could draw on top of it without worrying. Okay? I'm going to draw a straight line from here. I'm going to hold down the shift key so that it remains perfectly straight up and down. Release, and there's my line. And I'm going to make the line a little bit wider, and then I'm going to make a dash line. And zipper teeth are wide and kind of flat-ish. So my dashes are going to be skinny, and my gaps are going to be even skinnier because everything is like compressed together. And maybe I want my zipper teeth to be even wider. See that? Okay. If you don't want to look at the guideline all the time, once you're done using it, you can go to your layers and delete it. Or you can just hit Command semicolon to hide it temporarily. And then you could just hit Command semicolon again to show up again. So there is your zipper teeth. Okay. And of course, again, you can play with these to get the kind of effect that you want. And then I would take my pen tool and draw in, okay, hold down the Shift key, the edges of my fabric as they butt up against the zipper, right? That's the edge of the fabric coming up here. That's where your zipper teeth sits. So here's the edge of my fabric. Here are my zipper teeth. And here's my zipper tape that would be visible. Okay. If you want a lot of the tape showing, you could move the fabric back. If you only want the teeth, just the teeth to show, but none of the zipper tape, you can move the fabric right up to the edge of the zipper. You know, so only your teeth are showing. And then you can put in whatever top stitching you want here if you want some. So here's that. Maybe I want double needle top stitch here. Take these two. I'm going to make them skinnier than my fabric edge. I'm going to dash line these things. Boom. And there we go. Oh, we should probably put them on the other side too. Symmetrical garments and whatnot. And there is your fat exposed zipper running along the center front of your pencil skirt with double needle top stitching on both sides. And we did all that simply using the dash line tool. Ta-da! And then, oh, look, they're all over the place. Hold on. And then up here, of course, you would draw, you know, your zipper pull. You know, however fancy you want to get with that, okay? You should probably draw it better than that, but you get my drift, right? Another thing that I like to use the dash line for is rib knit. So here's our sweatshirt, remember this? And let's say I want to have rib knit trim at the waistband. You know, standard sweatshirt, right? So what I would do, again, I want to lock this so that doesn't move. I'm going to take my pen tool and I'm going to draw the width of the waistband, hold down my Shift key so that things aren't moving around. Where is it? Oh, it has no weight. So what you're gonna do is you're going to increase the line width. Okay, that was too much. Until you're filling in the whole space. Then you're gonna put in the dash line. Ta-da! Look, so many lines. And at this point, you can play with that so that you're getting the rib knit ratio, style, tightness, that you want. I also do this with fringe. Not so much fringe that's like dancing and floating around on a figure, but straight hanging fringe on a garment where you draw the flat and the fringe is laying perfectly flat. And you can have fringe along the edge of your pencil skirt. Okay, that's starting to look a little bit crazy in terms of design, but You get the idea, right? This is one of my favorite stroke tools, and that is the outline stroke tool. When you see something like this, yeah, this is your flat and you have all your line widths done perfectly the way you want them. You have your skinny lines for your top stitching. You have your fat lines for the outside. Everything is good to go. And let's say your boss is like, I love this thing and I want to get it blown up and put on the cover of something. And what happens is you take this and you blow it up, and then the proportions of the lines change because this is still a 1-point line, but you blew it up super huge so that in proportion, everything looks super skinny, right? You want to keep the proportion of the line weight the same to your drawing. When you blow it up, what do you do? What do you do? You outline the stroke. So remember our random crazy line that is whatever thickness you want it to be. Let's say it's 6. Okay. You're going to go to Object. You're going to Path. And then you're going to Outline Stroke. And it turns it into a drawing, this line. You see that? The path is all along the outside now. And now it has your anchor points. And you can do things like pull things, whatever. You can manipulate it afterwards however you want. But now this is an outlined stroke. And so you can take this and blow it up, and the proportions are going to stay the same. Okay, not the thickness of the stroke, the proportions of the whole line. So what you're going to do is take your whole flat, select the whole thing. You're going to go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and it will outline the stroke. And not only does it do that, it outlines all your dash marks for the ribbing, okay? And so you can blow it up as much as you want, and it retains the proportions of the stroke to the sweatshirt. And you can shrink it super teeny tiny. Okay, remember that's the original size. And again, it retains the proportions of the stroke. Genius! Whoever came up with that tool in Illustrator deserves a prize. Keep in mind that the outline stroke tool should only be used when your flat is 100% finalized and done. Because after you outline the stroke, it gets a little bit more difficult to make corrections. Okay, so what I would do is I would copy and paste this whole thing. God bless Command Z, right? All right. So what I would do here before I outline the stroke is I would make a copy, paste it into a new layer, set it aside for safekeeping, select the whole shebang, Path, Outline Stroke, and here it is. So yeah, later on you may find that, oh, I don't like this ribnit trim, or the ribnit changed so much that the flat doesn't even look like it anymore. So you might want to go in and change your ribnit trim, copy and paste it, and then redo the outline stroke for the final again, because the outline stroke is definitely like a final finishing thing before you start resizing. Okay? And I think that is enough information for today. Go practice, go play with all of your stroke options, weight, cap, corner, dash lines. Play with all the things that your dash lines can do. Practice with the outline stroke tool. Like, yeah, Zoe, practice, practice, practice. I'm just saying this for the newbies. Hello, people new to my channel. I push practice a lot. A lot. All right? Hashtag practice, not magic, because we are not made of magic. We are made of practice. Hashtag always be practicing. Hashtag if your first one sucks, you're right on track. And I will see you in the next video.